A very good afternoon to all of you. Good afternoon, all. Good afternoon, Jai Hind. I hope each one of you are doing great. So, in this session today, we will be now discussing the last chapter of our class 8th NCERT. So, now previously we have seen in this class 8th NCERT how many different concepts, many different topics have been given. But this topic essentially raises a very important topic, a very important concern of those who are really marginalized, concern of those who have been suffering really. Now, in this topic, the author takes a very brilliant example of the Bhopal gas tragedy. Okay, an event that had taken place. Okay, until date, since 1984 till date, the victims, those who were affected, are still looking for the real justice to what they have been through. Now, along with this, one more thing. This topic has also highlighted a very important concept of responsibility. Responsibility that lies with the government and how the government should acknowledge those responsibilities. Clear? So, these all are the concepts that we will be discussing in our session today. So, all of you who have joined me now, I welcome each one of you here in this session today. And today we will be discussing some very important concepts around this. Okay. So, a very good afternoon to all of you who have joined me in this session. I welcome every one of you here. Now, when we talk about this topic, okay. Now, in this session, we would be discussing this last chapter. Okay. Law and social justice, and this is essentially the last chapter of class 8th NCERT. Clear? Now, if we have to understand, in a diversified country like India, okay, the concept of social justice is not merely an ideal, but social justice in India is something that has a legal mandate. Okay, so this is something that has a legal mandate. And how this has a legal mandate? This has been mentioned under the preamble. Okay, this is something that has been mentioned under the fundamental rights. This is something that has been mentioned under the DPSPs. Clear? So, social justice has a legal mandate in India. Okay, and in order to make these things relevant, law serves as a primary instrument. Okay, the law, it serves as the primary instrument through which the state aims to achieve social justice, and not just to social justice, the state is also planning to rectify the historical inequalities. Okay, it plans to protect the vulnerable and ensure a dignified life for all of its citizens. Now, in this session, we would explore how the laws are made so as to implement social justice and how these practices are enforced to regulate the markets, to protect the life of workers, to safeguard the environment, and also uplift the marginalized communities. Okay. Now, unless and until the marginalized communities are uplifted, the workers are protected, the environment is safeguarded, the social fabric of this entire country cannot be reshaped. So we have to understand this dynamics, and it is very crucial for us to understand that these principles are social justice are relevant also for the governance of this country. Clear? Okay, so these principles are also very realistic and are also very important to understand the governance of the country. Okay, now also understanding a few things. In our country, laws are necessary in many situations. Whether we are going to the market, whether we are working at an office or we have a factory, now we must have certain laws. Okay, now why these laws are required? These laws are required to protect the people from the unfair practices. Now private companies, contractors, business practices, okay, we all know that they have been paying very low wages to their own workers. They have been employing children. Okay, now why foreign countries are coming into India? Because they wanted cheap labor, they want to make profits. Okay, so in this era of capitalism, when everyone is looking for profits, okay, now just imagine in a country like India wherein there are laws that children should not be employed. In such a country children have been employed. Why? Just because the employer has to give them low wages. Okay, and employing of children for work, ignoring the conditions of the work, ignoring the damage to the environment, etc., is though are amongst those things which are being ignored by the people at large. So, in order to ensure that entire set of regulation takes place in India, the government plays a major role. Okay, and if not, government should play a major role. Therefore, it is the responsibility to control the activities of the private as well as the public companies, and we have to ensure that the responsibilities are properly enforced, the laws are properly upheld, and the unfair practices and the principles of social justice are nicely implemented in this country. Okay, so by and large, the government has to make some appropriate laws. The government shall have to ensure that making the laws is not important, enforcing the laws is much important. Okay, the laws that are weak and poorly enforced can cause serious harms. Okay, and this country like India cannot afford anything like the Bhopal gas tragedy again. Okay, now why did the entire Bhopal gas tragedy happen? It is only because in India the laws are actually weak and people find out loopholes to selectively implement those laws which are actually weak. Okay, so while our government has a leading role in this aspect, okay, people can also exert the pressure so that both the private companies and the government they act only keeping in mind the interest of the society. Now, environment, as we have seen, is just one example. Okay. Now, why do I say environment is just an example? Because it is one domain where people have pushed a public cause. Okay. The courts have upheld the right of healthy environment. Okay. And even the right of healthy environment is somehow correlated to right to life. Clear? So healthy environment has also been correlated to right to life. Okay, we have seen that ultimately, okay, ultimately healthy environment is something that must be extended to all. Okay, and not just healthy environments, the rights, the principles of governance must be applicable to all. Okay, people now must come forward, people must demand stronger laws, people must demand the protection of the interest of the workers so that their right to life is achieved for all. Clear? So this is something that we will be discussing in this session. This is something that we will be highlighting in this session. Clear? Chaliye. Now, when we move ahead in this chapter, when we move ahead in this topic, okay, ultimately, the bigger question that comes up is that we have seen variety of unregulated environment, unorganized sector wherein people have been working. And in order to protect people from any sort of exploitation, the government must have some specific laws. Okay. Now, these laws must ensure that the unfair practices are minimized to the greatest aspect. Okay. So, in today's scenario, we have seen that there has been a great issue of the wages of workers. Okay, in private companies, in contractors, in business persons. Okay, their only aim is to make as much profit as they could. Okay, now even though the drive for profits, okay, they ultimately end up denying the rights to the workers. Okay, they either do not pay them wages, they pay them less wages. Okay, they make them work for extra hours. Okay, so in the eyes of law, even though it might be illegal, okay, but uh, denying wages to the workers is something that amounts to their exploitation, which directly corresponds to the exploitation against their right to life. Okay. Now, similarly, to ensure that workers are not underpaid or they are paid fairly, there there is in a country there is a law on minimum wages. Okay, a worker has to be paid not less than the minimum wage by the employer. Okay, the minimum wages are revised in the upward manner yearly. Okay, yearly or even after few years the revisions take place. Okay, now the government has set, okay, and as per the law on minimum wages, it is meant to protect the workers. There are also laws that protect the interest of producers and consumers in the market. Now, to help these ensure that the relation between these three pillars of the society, the worker, consumer, and producer, okay, the governor must ensure that there must be no form of exploitation taking place. Clear? Okay. Now, one thing, okay, that is essential for governance in the country is that merely making the laws is not enough in India. Okay, the government has to ensure that the laws are properly implemented. Okay, now this also means that the laws must be enforced, and enforcement thus becomes very important when the law is aimed to protect the weaker from the stronger. Okay, the individual who is inferior from the one who has positioned himself or herself superiority. Okay, so if we take an example, so for example, we can see that to ensure that every worker gets fair wages, the government has to regularly inspect the working sites. Okay, along with working inspection, the government must punish strictly those who have been violating the law. Now, when workers are poor, when the workers are powerless, the fear of losing future earnings or facial or basically facing the repression of the society is something due to which the people have also been accepting the lower wages, the accepting the ignorance of the law. Now, employer knows this. Okay, and employer knows that the worker is poor, the worker is powerless, and the worker might not act against me. And this is the reason that they are being exploited, and this is how the enforcement of the laws become essential. Okay, moreover, we have also seen that uh, through proper laws, okay, enforcement of the laws, upholding the laws, the government can control the activities of individuals or the private companies so as to ensure the social justice. Now, many of these laws have their basis in the fundamental rights. Okay, now if I give you an example, okay, the right against exploitation, okay, we have seen that right exploitation is under Article 23, Article 24. Okay, but it has the higher relevance in Article 21 as well. Okay, now essentially, we have seen that right against exploitation says that no one can be forced to work for low wages or as a bonded labor. Okay. Similarly, the child labor has also been prohibited. Okay. The constitution lays down that no child below the age of 14 years shall be employed to work in any factory or mine or any hazardous environment. Okay. But practically, are these laws implemented or are they being played out? Okay. Question comes up here is to what extent the people have been addressing these concerns of social justice. Now, these are some of the questions that we need to understand. Okay. Now, in order to understand this, we must take this example as it has been given in this book. Okay. Bhopal gas tragedy. Now, this Bhopal gas tragedy. Okay. This is probably the world's worst industrial tragedy that had taken place at Bhopal in 1984. There was a company, Union Carbide, an American company, okay, which had a factory in Bhopal and it produced pesticides. Okay. Now at midnight on the 2nd of December 1984, okay, methyl isocyanate, which is a very highly poisonous gas, it started leaking from the plant of the Union Carbide factory. Okay. Now, even though the official number says that in the aftermath of the leak, around 2,000, 3,000 people died. Okay. And within few days, the region saw death of around 8,000 people. But the actual deaths or the actual number that has been assessed or observed by various organizations, by various independent news agencies, says that the total number of deaths were even more than 20,000. Okay. A leak in which within 3 days more than 8,000 people died. Okay. Hundreds of thousands of people, they were all left disabled. Okay. The people who were exposed to this poisonous gas, they all came from poor families. They all came from the working class families. Okay. And the result of this Bhopal gas tragedy is that till date, okay, it is said that not all the people have recovered. Okay, it was after the leak, nearly 50,000 people were said to have fallen sick. Okay, they were not able to work. And amongst those who had survived, many of them developed severe respiratory disorders, eye problems, and other disorders. Children developed peculiar abnormalities. Okay, so we have seen that multiple things had happened, but these people have been expecting justice till date. Okay, now this disaster, this Union Carbide disaster, was not an accident, it was not a one-off accident. Okay, Union Carbide has deliberately ignored the essential safety measures just to cut their costs. Okay, and much before the Bhopal disaster, there had been incidents of gas leak killing workers and injuring many workers. Okay, now there were overwhelming evidences that pointed out that Union Carbide was responsible for the disaster. But Union Carbide refused to accept the responsibility. Okay. And due to the weaker laws, even the government was not able to put responsibilities onto them. Okay. Legal battle continued. The government represented the victims, okay, against Union Carbide. Okay. And it filed a 3 billion compensation case in 1985, but around 470 millions were accepted in 1989. The survivors since then appealed against the settlement, but the Supreme Court ruled that the settlement amount would be sufficient and it would stand. Okay. Now the Union Carbide stopped its operations but left behind tons of toxic chemicals. Now these toxic chemicals have further seeped into the ground, contaminating water. And Dow Chemicals, the company who now owns the plant, refuses to clean up the entire area. So we have seen that even after over we have seen that even at that time when decades have passed, okay, people are still fighting for justice, people are still looking for safe drinking water, healthcare facilities, and jobs for the people who were literally poisoned by the Union Carbide. They also demand that the chairman of Union Carbide, Anderson, must also be prosecuted. And it was only due to the lax laws that Anderson fled away overnight. Okay, and no action had been taken against this. Clear? So, if we have to understand what essentially happens, okay, we must understand the very reason why foreign companies come to India. Okay, now foreign companies that are coming to India, it is not that they are very much concerned about the Indians or the development of India. Okay, they are coming to India only for cheap labor. Okay, wages that the companies pay to their workers, okay, supposedly in developed countries like USA, are far higher than what they have to pay to workers in poor countries like India. So for lower pay, companies can get longer hours of work. Additional expenses such as for housing facilities, worker are also very few. Thus, companies are coming to India only to save their costs. Okay, only to earn higher, only to make larger profits. So cost cutting can also be done by other more dangerous means. Now, lower working conditions include lower safety. Okay, moreover, they are cutting the cost in the safety. In the Union Carbide plant, every safety device was malfunctioning. Okay, or what we can call it was literally either unavailable or short in supply. Around 1980 and 1984, the working crew of the methyl isocyanate plant was cut in half from 12 to 6 workers. The period of safety training for workers was brought down from 6 months to 15 days. The post of night shift workers for the methyl gas plant was also abolished. So we can see that the safety measures in India are blatantly abused. Okay, so as the responsibility of the government, if we have to talk about the responsibility of the government and that of the lawmaker, the government is supposed to ensure that safety laws are implemented. Okay, it is also the duty of the government to ensure that the right to life, which is guaranteed under Article 21 of the Constitution, should not be violated. Okay, now what the government has been doing, okay, there were blatant violations. These standards are being violated, as we have seen in the example of Union Carbide. Okay, so first and foremost, the issue must be the safety laws were weak in India. And secondly, even those weak safety laws are not properly being enforced in India. Okay, so the government officials who knew that Union Carbide factory has been located in a highly populated locality, okay, they refused to recognize that the plant was hazardous. Okay, and they allowed it to be established in a populated colony. So we can understand that instead of protecting the interest of people, okay, their safety, okay, the government and the private companies have been disregarding them. Okay, this is something which is not at all desirable. So with more industries being set up both by local and the foreign businesses in India, there is greater need for stronger laws. Okay, stronger laws to protect the rights of the workers and uh, to ensure that their lives are bettered and not exploited. Okay, now, we have also seen that there have been a few new laws to protect the environment. Okay, so it was in 1984, there were very few laws that were protecting the environment in India, and there was hardly any enforcement of these laws. Now, the environment was treated as low as a free entity. Okay, the industries had been blatantly polluting the air, water, and there have been no restrictions. Okay, so whether it was our rivers, whether it was air, whether it was groundwater, the environment was being polluted and the health of people was disregarded. Okay, so we can see that Union Carbide had been a one-off example. Okay, Union Carbide was a beneficiary of lower safety standards in India. Okay, Union Carbide did not have to spend any money to clean up the pollution they had done. Okay, have they have been in the USA? Okay, they would have to go through highest standards of accountability and would have to undo whatever pollution had been done by them. So we need to ensure that the proper accountability measures have to be taken up. Okay, moreover, the government must come forward to ensure that the violation of these laws does not go unpunished in this country. Clear? Then only we can expect the higher standards of social justice being implemented. Clear? So environmental protection is again a new frontier. Okay, there have been various new laws coming up. We have seen the water prevention and control of pollution law has been there. Air prevention of pollution and control law has been there. Environment protection laws has been there. Moreover, we have also seen that in 2010 National Green Tribunal had also been established. Okay, so for immediate and for expeditious disposal of cases relating to environment protection. Okay, moreover, in such a scenario, the role of PIL also becomes very important. Okay, now the concept of public interest litigation that has come up, okay, has also expanded the scope of accountability. Okay, moreover, now environmental protection is a fundamental right under Article 21 of the Constitution. Okay, cases like the MC Mehta case have led to significant policy changes. Okay, they have ensured the closure of polluting industries. Mandatory environmental and impact assessments and public awareness campaigns are also being launched. Clear? So this is how the laws must be made, and laws must be made for the marginalized as well as the vulnerable sections of society. Clear? So like the laws that have been made for punishing the discrimination and atrocities against the SC, STs and the other minorities, there must be laws for the protection of social workers also. And if those are not made, okay, the real social justice will not prevail in the country. Clear? Chaliye. So this is essentially the gist of this topic. Okay. Now this topic essentially works around the same. Moreover, you can join me in my Telegram channel wherein I'll share all the PDFs of all of my sessions as well as the current affairs session. Moreover, today is the last day to avail the Guru Kripa sale. Okay, to avail the benefits of the Guru Kripa sale. Moreover, beyond 50% off and double validity, this sale is offering you mentorship by the rankers, mentorship by the successful candidates. Clear? So please do not miss this opportunity. Use this code SRM Live to avail all benefits of this Guru Kripa sale. Clear? So this was